The Velkari Armada was a name that made the stars tremble. For more than 2 centuries, their fleet had conquered system after system. No world had ever survived their arrival. The Velkari believed they were the rightful rulers of the galaxy, strong, organized, and merciless in battle. At the center of their fleet was Admiral Kethrael, a tall alien with dark silver skin and 4 glowing eyes. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vornaxis, a ship larger than most moons. Around him, thousands of ships floated in perfect formation. Every officer on the bridge moved with pride and confidence. They had never lost a single war. Today, the Armada entered a new star system on the edge of the Orion Spiral. Their long-range scanners had detected a small blue planet with signs of life and artificial satellites. The Velkari had come to add another world to their empire. "Report," Kethrael commanded, his voice cold and calm. A young officer bowed his head. "Admiral, the planet is called Earth according to local transmissions. Primitive species detected. They use radio waves and low-level orbital crafts. No interstellar capability." Kethrael smiled. "Another weak species? Prepare the standard conquest order." The bridge came alive with activity. Screens displayed weapon charges, fleet formations, and atmospheric entry plans. The Velkari operated with precision. Every invasion was the same, swift, efficient, and final. But as the Armada moved closer, something unusual happened. A faint signal reached them, a small transmission in a strange language. The communication officer frowned and began to decode it. "Admiral, incoming message. The source is unknown. It's not from the planet's surface. It's coming from orbit." Kethrael raised an eyebrow. "From orbit? Show me." The main screen flickered, revealing a dark shape floating near the planet. It was a single ship, metal gray, long, and simple in design. It had no visible energy signature that the Velkari could recognize. The officer zoomed in and scanned it. "Admiral, the ship is small, maybe 700 meters long. No active weapon readings. It looks old." Kethrael laughed softly. "A single ship guarding a planet? How charming. They must believe one craft can stop an armada." The communication officer continued decoding the signal. Then suddenly the audio cleared. A calm human voice filled the bridge. "Unidentified fleet, this is UNS Dreadnought Vigilant. You are entering restricted human space. Identify yourselves or change course immediately." The bridge fell silent. The humans had spoken first. Kethrael crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Humans, is it? Such confidence for a single ship. Ignore them. Continue the approach." The officer hesitated. "Admiral, the message was direct. They seem confident." Kethrael's expression hardened. "Confidence without power is foolishness. Open communication. I will respond." A moment later, Kethrael's deep voice echoed through space. "This is Admiral Kethrael of the Velkari Empire. We come to claim this planet. Leave our path or be destroyed." Seconds passed. The human ship didn't reply. "Perhaps they understood their place," Kethrael said, smiling again. But then the Vigilant responded, calm and steady. "Your claim is denied. Turn back, Admiral. This is your only warning." The crew on the bridge exchanged uneasy glances. No one had ever spoken to the Velkari with such calm defiance. "Prepare weapons," Kethrael ordered sharply. "Let this Vigilant be an example to the rest of its kind." Thousands of energy cannons across the Velkari fleet powered up. Blue plasma charges glowed in the void. The Admiral raised his hand, signaling the attack. "Fire." Dozens of plasma bolts streaked across space, all heading for the human ship. The Vigilant didn't move. For a moment, the Velkari thought the ship had frozen in fear. Then the plasma hit and vanished. The bridge crew gasped. The plasma didn't explode. It simply disappeared into a faint golden shimmer surrounding the human vessel. "What just happened?" Kethrael demanded. The science officer's hands shook. "Admiral, our energy weapons were absorbed. Their ship is surrounded by some kind of shield. Energy absorption field, perhaps." Kethrael's calm expression faltered. "Absorbed? That's impossible. No known technology can—" Before he could finish, the Vigilant moved. Slowly, deliberately. Then came a sound, a sharp metallic thud that shook their sensors. A single projectile had been fired. "Just one shot?" the weapons officer whispered. A second later, one of the Velkari cruisers exploded in silence, broken into fragments by a railgun slug moving faster than light itself. The debris scattered across space, glowing red and white. Kethrael's command room filled with alarm signals. "What weapon was that?" The science officer stared at his screen. "A kinetic round, Admiral. Solid metal. No plasma, no energy source, yet it destroyed a heavy cruiser in one hit. Silence returned to the bridge. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's engines. The Vigilant fired again. Another cruiser vanished. Then another. The human ship didn't fire rapidly. It fired with purpose, each shot hitting perfectly. Every target destroyed in a single strike. The Valkyrie fleet began to break formation. Panic spreading through the ranks. "Admiral, they're targeting command ships," an officer shouted. Kethral clenched his fists. "Regroup! Bring the destroyers forward. Overwhelm it with numbers." But as the fleet moved, their systems flickered. The lights dimmed, sensors glitched, and navigation screens filled with static. "Admiral," the engineer shouted. "Something's hacking our systems." "Unknown source." Kethral turned slowly toward the main screen, where the Vigilant floated silently against the backdrop of the blue planet. "Are they doing this?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral. It's a cyber intrusion, powerful and precise. They're inside our systems already." The Admiral's breath grew heavy. His race was known for technological superiority, yet here they were, blinded and confused by one human ship. Then the human voice returned, calm, steady, cold. "We gave you a warning. Now you understand our position. Leave this system. No threats, no anger, only control." Kethral stared at the screen, his eyes wide. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something strange, something he had never known. Fear. He wanted to reply, but before he could, the Vigilant powered its main cannon. A bright line of light crossed the void and cut through another Valkyrie ship. The debris floated past the flagship's windows. Kethral could no longer pretend this was an easy battle. The human ship was not primitive. It was far more advanced than anything the Valkyrie had ever seen. "Admiral, we must retreat," one of his captains shouted over the comm channel. "We are losing control of our systems." Kethral looked around the bridge. His officers avoided his gaze. Pride was fading, replaced by terror. He slammed his fist against the console. "No, we are the Valkyrie Armada. We do not flee from one ship." But deep inside, even he knew this was no ordinary enemy. The Vigilant stopped firing. It simply hovered silent and still, as if it had proven its point. The stars around them seemed quieter. Even the hum of the Vornaxis' engines sounded weaker. "Admiral," the communications officer whispered. "They're sending another message." Kethral forced himself to stand tall. "Play it." The same calm human voice spoke once more. "We are humanity. We do not seek war, but we will defend our home. You have one chance to leave unharmed." And with that, the transmission ended. The Vigilant did not fire again. It did not chase them. It simply waited. Admiral Kethral stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the screen. The ship floated before him, small, simple, but impossibly powerful. For the first time in history, the Valkyrie Armada didn't advance. They hesitated. Silence filled the bridge. The proud warriors of the Valkyrie Empire stood frozen, realizing that this was not another easy conquest. Something about humanity was different. Something that the galaxy had never faced before. And in that moment, as the blue planet shined in the distance and the Vigilant waited without fear, Admiral Kethral whispered to himself, "What kind of species are they?" The question echoed through the silent fleet. And though no one answered, every Valkyrie on that bridge knew one truth. This time, the invincible Armada had met its match. The Valkyrie Armada hung motionless in the dark of space. Thousands of ships, once glowing with bright confidence, now floated in silence. The proud fleet that had crushed empires and silenced worlds was staring at a single human warship that did not move, did not run, and yet had already broken their pride. On the bridge of the flagship Vornaxis, Admiral Kethral stood with his hands behind his back. His four glowing eyes stared at the screen showing the UNS Dreadnought Vigilant, still hovering above the blue planet called Earth. His officers waited for him to speak, but Kethral said nothing. The silence was heavy, filled with disbelief. Every officer on the bridge had seen what happened. The Valkyrie had fired the first shot and been defeated in seconds. Finally, Kethral spoke, his voice low but steady. "They are strong, yes, but one ship cannot stand against the might of the Valkyrie Empire." His words gave the officers hope. Pride returned to their eyes. "Admiral, perhaps they used a special shield. If we attack with full power, we can overwhelm them," one of them suggested. Kethrel nodded slowly. We will test their strength again. Prepare the fleet for coordinated assault pattern Delta. All across the Velkhari Armada, engines roared to life. Cruisers, destroyers, and battleships formed into tight formations. The ship's weapons glowed blue as they charged full power. On the Vigilant, Captain Elena Ward watched quietly. Her ship's sensors showed the massive fleet spreading out. The aliens were preparing for another strike. She stood on her command deck with calm confidence. Around her, human officers worked swiftly but without fear. Every one of them knew the stakes. Humanity had been discovered. This was no longer a secret encounter. It was a test of survival. "Captain," said her first officer, Commander Hale. "Velkhari fleet forming up again. Looks like they're planning a full barrage." Ward nodded. "Good, let them." Hale blinked.
"Ma'am?"
She smiled faintly. "They're predictable. They believe strength is about numbers. They don't understand precision." On the human ship's tactical screen, hundreds of red icons represented the enemy fleet. Each icon showed multiple energy readings charging rapidly. "Shields to maximum. Divert auxiliary power to the rail systems," Ward ordered calmly, "and prepare countermeasures." Outside, the human dreadnought looked silent and harmless, but deep inside its armored hull, the heart of the ship pulsed with quiet power. Fusion cores glowed. Magnetic fields tightened. The Aegis shield shimmered faintly like a thin veil of gold. Then, the Velkhari fired. The darkness of space turned bright as hundreds of plasma bolts and energy lances shot toward the Vigilant. The weapons lit up the void like fireworks. For a few seconds, it seemed that the human ship would vanish in the storm of energy. But the light faded, and the Vigilant remained untouched. Every bolt had been absorbed again. The Aegis shield rippled once, then returned to calm gold light. On the Vornaxis, the Velkhari officers froze in disbelief. "Admiral, our weapons did nothing," whispered the science officer. Kethrel's jaw tightened. "Impossible." "Increase firepower. All ships focus on that target." The Velkhari unleashed everything they had. Missiles, plasma, and beam weapons filled the sky. Yet it was useless. The Vigilant stood firm. Then came the human reply. The Vigilant's railguns turned slowly, aiming with silent precision. The first shot tore through a destroyer. The second shattered a cruiser. Every round was clean, controlled, and exact. 3 enemy ships down, Commander Hale reported. "Minimal energy usage." Captain Ward watched the readings. Her face remained calm. "Maintain distance. They'll try to rush us next." She was right. Admiral Kethrel slammed his fist against the command console. "All forward ships ram the human vessel if you must. Surround it." Dozens of Velkhari ships began to accelerate toward the Vigilant, their engines glowing red-hot. "Captain, incoming fast targets," Hale warned. Ward raised her hand. "Deploy subspace distorters." The Vigilant released invisible waves across the void. The effect was immediate. Velkhari ships slowed, their engines flickering as their flight paths twisted. It was as if invisible gravity fields had grabbed them. "Admiral, our drives are failing. We can't reach them." A panicked voice shouted from one of the Velkhari cruisers. "Counter it! Now!" Kethrel roared. But there was no counter. Their technology simply couldn't fight it. The Vigilant moved again, firing another railgun burst. 4 ships broke apart like paper. Then silence. The Velkhari fleet was now scattered and disorganized. Captain Ward took a breath. "Send a message. Channel to their flagship." The communications officer nodded. "Ready, Captain." Ward stepped closer to the holographic projector. Her calm face appeared across the Velkhari bridge. "Admiral Kethrel of the Velkhari Empire," she said evenly. "You have entered human territory without permission. Your attacks have been recorded. We will not allow further hostility." Every alien on the Vornaxis froze. No one had ever spoken to their admiral that way. Kethrel glared at her image. "You dare threaten the Velkhari Empire, human? We command thousands of fleets." Ward tilted her head slightly. "Then it's your empire that should be afraid. Because one human ship stopped your strongest fleet." The words hit harder than any weapon. For a few moments, Kethrel said nothing. His pride burned, but he knew the truth. The human ship's power was beyond understanding. Still, he refused to show weakness. "You cannot win forever, Captain Ward. You are only one ship. We will study your technology and return stronger." Ward's eyes softened, not with fear, but pity. "You still don't understand. Strength isn't just about weapons. It's about knowing when to stop." Her image faded as the transmission ended. Admiral Kethrel stood motionless. Around him, the officers whispered. Some begged to retreat, others wanted to keep fighting. But then something new happened. Every Valkyrie ship system flickered again. Warnings appeared on their screens. One by one, their navigation systems went offline. Their engines shut down. "Communications jammed, Admiral!" the engineer shouted. "They've infected our core network. They control our systems." Kethrel's eyes widened. "How?" "We have the most secure network in the Empire." The officer swallowed hard. "They're using quantum encryption bypass codes. No species has ever broken that before." The realization hit Kethrel like a storm. The humans weren't just powerful, they were intelligent. They had prepared for this. Outside, the Vigilant glowed softly. Its energy field expanded and strange geometric patterns shimmered in the void. Every Valkyrie ship within the radius became motionless, locked in place by invisible pressure. It was not an attack. It was control. On the Vigilant, Commander Hale turned to Ward. "We could destroy them all, Captain. Their fleet is defenseless." Ward looked at the blue planet below. "No, we will not be like them. They attacked first. We respond with reason, not rage." She turned back to Hale. "Disable their weapons only. Let them live to remember." Moments later, invisible energy pulses reached the Valkyrie ships. Every cannon, every missile launcher, and every torpedo bay went dark. On the Vornaxis, the bridge lights dimmed. The ship's systems were silent. The mighty flagship, once the pride of the Valkyrie Empire, now drifted powerless before a single human warship. Admiral Kethrel slowly sank into his command chair. His eyes stared blankly at the screen showing the human vessel. "They could have destroyed us," whispered his first officer. Kethrel's voice was barely audible. "Yes, but they didn't." He didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Mercy, he realized, could be more frightening than destruction. The human ship remained still as if waiting for something. Then a soft pulse of light blinked from its hull, a signal. The translation came quickly. "Stand down. Leave this system. Do not return." Kethrel read the message again and again. The tone was not angry or proud. It was final, like a teacher giving a lesson. He lowered his head. "Signal the fleet. Prepare for withdrawal." His officers stared at him in shock. "Admiral, retreat?" "Yes," Kethrel said quietly. "This battle is over." And so the once feared Valkyrie Armada began to turn away. Ship after ship activated its jump drives and vanished into the void, leaving behind only silence and the faint glow of a golden shield. As the last Valkyrie ship disappeared, Captain Ward ordered, "Stand down weapons. Return to silent watch." The Vigilant resumed its post above Earth like a guardian returning to rest. Commander Hale looked at her and smiled slightly. "Do you think they'll come back?" Ward stared into the stars. "Not soon. They have learned what humanity truly is." The Valkyrie Armada had vanished into the void, leaving the silent blue planet behind. Yet in the heart of the Valkyrie Empire, panic had already begun to spread. The news of the human warship reached the High Council of Valkyrie, the most powerful assembly in their empire. For centuries, the council had prided itself on ruling without challenge, crushing rebellion before it began. Now the galaxy's most feared warriors had met a single human ship and had been humiliated. The council chamber was a massive hall, carved into a living asteroid. Each member floated in zero gravity within their transparent seats, glowing with their characteristic blue aura. At the center, Admiral Kethrel stood before the High Council, his pride wounded and his body tense. His four eyes reflected the holographic display showing the Valkyrie fleet in disarray. "Explain," said Archon Virel, the leader of the council, his voice cold and sharp. One ship. And you claim to have been challenged?" Kethrel's jaw tightened. "Archon Virel, they were not just a ship. They were beyond anything we anticipated. Our weapons, our fleet coordination, even our cyber defenses, none of it worked." A murmur spread through the council. Some members gasped, others clenched fists in anger. Valkyrie pride had never been broken in centuries. "Are you saying they controlled our systems?" asked High Admiral Tysar, voice trembling slightly. "Yes," Kethrel admitted. "They locked our engines, shut down our weapons, and disabled our comms, all without firing a single devastating strike. And then they left us alive. They did not destroy a single Valkyrie soldier." Silence filled the chamber. For the first time, The High Council realized the Valkyrie might not be the strongest in the galaxy. One species, humans, had not only survived but had demonstrated power, discipline, and restraint. Discipline. Archon Virel scoffed. Do not insult the Council with words. You failed, Admiral. You allowed this, human, to humiliate the Empire. How could you let one ship dictate the fate of thousands? Kethrel bowed his head slightly. Archon, we did not lose because we were weak. We lost because they were precise, intelligent. They were more than weapons, they understood the cost of battle. Their decision to spare us has made them more terrifying than any enemy we have faced. A flash of anger crossed Virel's eyes. Terrifying?
You mean they embarrassed us?
Do you not understand, Kethrel? You will answer for this failure. The Empire does not forgive weakness. Kethrel clenched his fists, but he remained composed. Archon, I do not deny our failure in the encounter. But understand this, the humans did not strike to kill. They struck to teach, and they did so with calm control and intelligence. They are unlike any species in history. The Council remained silent for a moment, digesting the Admiral's words. The murmurs became louder, heated arguments breaking out among members. High Admiral Tisar's voice rose above the others. Kethrel is correct. Our fleet lost because the humans fought differently. They are disciplined. They do not rely on brute force. We have never faced such strategy executed with such precision. Virel's glowing eyes narrowed. And you suggest we respect them? Kethrel nodded. No, Archon. I suggest we study them before we attempt retaliation. If we attack again, we will be destroyed. They are human. The word echoed in the chamber like a warning. Human. Meanwhile, across space, the UNS Dreadnought Vigilant had returned to orbit above Earth. Captain Elena Ward monitored the distant Valkyrie fleet's movements through long-range sensors. They had retreated, but Ward knew this was only the beginning. Commander Hale, she said, voice calm but firm. They will talk about this. Their entire empire will hear of our strength, and they will fear us. But we must remain vigilant. One ship can only do so much against a galaxy determined to test us. Hale nodded. Yes, Captain. Do you think they will attack again? Ward shook her head. Perhaps. But the lesson has already been delivered. Strength is not only in weapons, it is in courage, discipline, and mercy. On the planet below, Earth's leaders had also begun to understand the encounter. Satellite data and sensor readings confirmed the magnitude of the Valkyrie fleet and the human ship's actions. Intelligence officers, scientists, and world leaders studied the engagement with fascination and awe. We have never seen technology like this, one scientist said. They stopped thousands of ships with precision. And they did not destroy lives unnecessarily. Incredible. A political leader added, this changes everything. Humanity is no longer a young species. We have just proven ourselves capable of defending the planet against forces we barely understood. Back in the Valkyrie Empire, panic grew among fleets stationed near the edge of the human sector. Rumors spread like fire. Entire fleets had been disabled by one human ship. Officers whispered of human courage, of human ingenuity, and most of all of human discipline. Even soldiers who had never encountered the enemy knew they could not underestimate humanity. Admiral Kethrel spent long hours reviewing the battle data. Every tactical choice made by the Vigilant was analyzed. He realized something he had never accepted before. Humans did not rely on overwhelming force. They relied on knowledge, strategy, and the ability to adapt instantly. Their calmness in the face of danger made them unpredictable and terrifying. What makes them so different? Kethrel asked his chief science officer. The officer hesitated. It's not only their technology, Admiral. It's their decision-making. They are patient. They strike when necessary. They can destroy entire fleets or spare them based on judgment. No species we have encountered has this restraint. Kethrel exhaled slowly. For the first time, he felt something heavy on his chest. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of being outmatched by a species that combined intellect, morality, and power in ways he could not predict. Across the galaxy, the news of the encounter spread quickly. Mercantile guilds, independent fleets, and even distant empires heard whispers of the human ship that had bested the Valkyrie Armada. Many did not believe it at first, dismissing the stories as exaggeration. But the Valkyrie reports were detailed and precise. Images, sensor logs, and survivor accounts painted the same picture. One human ship had faced an entire armada, disabled it, and spared its enemies. Wherever the story reached, fear followed. Entire alien species began rethinking their approach to humans. Diplomats reported hesitation. Traders avoided the solar system. Even mercenaries chose safer assignments rather than challenge a human warship. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Ward continued her watch. She knew that the encounter was only the beginning. Humanity's presence in the galaxy would attract attention, both good and bad. The Vigilant patrolled quietly, scanning the nearby systems for anomalies. "Captain," Commander Hale said, breaking her thoughts, "they've sent probes near the system. Possibly scouting, possibly analyzing our technology." Ward nodded. "We will observe, but do not engage unless provoked. Let them see our strength, but also our restraint. That is humanity's advantage." Hale raised an eyebrow. "You really believe that mercy can be stronger than destruction?" Ward smiled faintly. "Yes, fear can be taught in many ways, and sometimes sparing an enemy teaches more than annihilation ever could." Back in the Velkari Empire, Admiral Kethral faced the High Council again. This time the session was not just anger, it was fear. The council members debated strategy, diplomacy, and intelligence. The question on every mind was the same. How could a single human ship do what thousands of Velkari ships could not? Tisser spoke cautiously. "We underestimated them. Their technology, their precision, it is unmatched. Even our top engineers cannot explain it fully." Virel, still angry but now wary, added, "And they chose to spare us. That mercy, it is a weapon we cannot comprehend. We must prepare for the future." Kethral's voice was steady. "Yes, we will study them, yes. But more importantly, we will remember. Humanity is not like other species. They are clever, disciplined, and fearless, and their restraint makes them more dangerous than any fleet we have ever faced." The council remained silent. Fear was slowly replacing pride. And in the silent reaches of space, the Vigilant continued its watch over Earth. A single ship, yet a symbol of something far greater, humanity itself. In the stars, legends began to form. The story of one human warship that had faced an armada and survived spread quietly, like a ripple across the galaxy. Many did not believe it. Many would dismiss it as myth. But for the Velkari, for Kethral, and for every species that had witnessed the aftermath, the lesson was clear. Never underestimate humanity. For the first time in galactic history, one species had taught the mighty Velkari Armada a lesson in fear, respect, and the power of intelligence and mercy combined, and the legend of the Vigilant was only beginning. The Velkari Armada limped into the outer edge of their territory, their once proud fleet now battered, broken, and shaken. Every ship, every crew member felt the weight of what had happened. They had faced one human ship, and survived only because that ship had chosen restraint. That restraint, however, was more terrifying than any attack could have been. On the bridge of the flagship Fornaxis, Admiral Kethral sat quietly. His 4 eyes were fixed on the distant stars. No one spoke. The usual hum of authority, the pride that filled the halls of the flagship, had vanished. "Report," Kethral finally said, his voice calm but heavy. The communications officer's hand shook as he spoke. "All ships have regained partial control, Admiral. Engines are functional. Most weapons are online, but some damage is irreversible. The fleet is operational, but morale is low." Kethral exhaled slowly. "Good, that is something." He turned to the science officer. "Analyze all available data from the encounter. Every strike, every maneuver, every system failure. We must understand them before any further contact." The officer bowed. "Yes, Admiral. The humans are unlike any species we have faced. Their ship is small, yet its power, coordination, and intelligence surpassed even our largest warships." Kethral's jaw tightened. "And yet they were merciful, that is, unsettling." Outside, the stars were quiet. For days, the Velkari fleet moved silently through the void, haunted by the memory of one human ship that had challenged an entire armada, and won without killing unnecessarily. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, the UNS Dreadnought Vigilant had not moved. Captain Elena Ward stood on the command deck, watching the distant blinking lights of Velkari ships as they fled the system. "Commander Hale," she said softly, "they survived. They learned. And they will remember." Hale nodded. "Do you think they will attack again, Captain?" Ward shook her head. "Perhaps someday. But now they know what humanity is capable of, and they also know that we do not seek unnecessary destruction. Hale studied the human dreadnought's shields, its glowing energy fields, and the sleek railgun systems. One ship did all this. One ship, Ward smiled faintly. One ship, but it represents humanity, and that is enough to change the balance of power. In the Velkari Empire, Kethrall faced another challenge. The High Council convened again, this time to demand answers and to decide the Empire's next move. Admiral Kethrall. Archon Varel began, his voice full of authority. You have returned. The encounter with the human ship is now the talk of the Empire. How do you explain this? Humiliation? Kethrall's voice was steady. Archon, the human species is unlike any other we have encountered. They possess technology, intelligence, and discipline that cannot be matched by force alone, and they have moral restraint that makes them even more dangerous than their weapons. The Council murmured among themselves. Some scoffed, others nodded cautiously. High Admiral Tysar spoke next. Are you saying we should not attack them again? Kethrall met Tissar's gaze. I am saying this. Any attack without careful study will be our destruction. They are powerful, clever, and patient. They do not strike without reason. If we attempt retaliation, we will not face a simple ship. We will face the entirety of human strategy and discipline. A long silence followed. The words weighed heavily on the Council. Fear had replaced arrogance. The galaxy's most feared empire had never been humbled like this before. Meanwhile, Ward prepared a final message for the Velkari. One last chance to demonstrate both humanity's power and its mercy. Prepare long-range communication, she ordered. Make it clear. They must understand. Hale set up the systems, carefully encoding the message in multiple formats to ensure the Velkari could receive it. Message ready, Captain, he said. Ward's face appeared across the Velkari flagship's bridge, calm and steady. Her voice carried across space. Admiral Kethrall, this is Captain Elena Ward of the UNS Dreadnought Vigilant. Humanity does not seek war. We protect our home, our planet, and our people. Your fleet attacked without reason, and we responded to defend ourselves. You have been spared. Learn from this encounter. Return to your territory and do not approach Earth again. The message ended simply, without threat. Without anger. It was clear, direct and firm, a warning delivered with control rather than rage. Kethrall's hands clenched around the armrest of his command chair. For the first time, he felt the full weight of the situation. They could have destroyed us entirely, he whispered to himself. They didn't, replied the science officer. Kethrall nodded slowly. And that is more terrifying than destruction. They chose mercy. That choice is a weapon we cannot comprehend. The Council observed in stunned silence. Even the most hardened members began to realize that humanity was not only powerful, but disciplined in ways the Velkari had never seen. Across the galaxy, stories of the human ship spread. Even distant systems that had no contact with Earth began to whisper of the UNS Dreadnought Vigilant. Traders and explorers spoke of the ship that had bested an armada of thousands with a single vessel. Some laughed, calling it impossible. Others paused, wary of the legend, and the Velkari, the empire that had once ruled the stars without challenge, began to tremble. Back on Earth, Ward reviewed the fleet data. Every ship, every maneuver, every disabled Velkari system had been recorded. We have taught them something important, she said quietly. Hale looked at her. And what is that, Captain? Ward's eyes shone with determination. That humans do not fight recklessly. That we protect, we defend, and we act with intelligence. That power without restraint is dangerous. But mercy teaches fear in ways weapons cannot. Days passed. The Velkari fleet retreated further into the void, and Earth's leaders debated what had happened. Sensors recorded the event, and scientists studied the data, realizing that humanity had not only survived but had also impressed, terrified, and humbled an alien empire. Ward's message was replayed across the galaxy by subspace communication networks, carried by relays, traders, and other species who had intercepted the signals. The words of one human captain echoed across star systems. Humanity does not seek war. We protect our home. Do not approach Earth again. And the galaxy listened. Meanwhile, Kethrall faced the High Council again. Archon Varel, he began. I have sent a report of the encounter. I suggest the Empire reconsider its approach to humanity. They are unlike any species we have known. Strength, intelligence, and moral restraint combined make them formidable. Varel's voice was quieter than before. I understand. But what of the rest of the galaxy? Will humans expand and challenge us elsewhere? Kethral hesitated. Perhaps. But one lesson has been learned. Underestimate humans at your own risk. We cannot fight them as we do other species. They are different. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. For centuries, no species had forced the Valkyrie to pause, to rethink, to fear. Now humanity had done all three with one ship. In orbit, the Vigilant remained silent. The human warship had completed its mission. A warning, a display of power, and a lesson in restraint. Captain Ward knew that the galaxy had taken notice, and she also knew that this was only the beginning of humanity's story among the stars. Hale looked at her quietly. Do you think they will return? Ward's eyes met the stars. Perhaps someday. But they will remember what happened here. And next time they will think twice. For the Valkyrie, for Kethral, and for every species watching from afar, one truth had become clear. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not as a threat to conquer, but as a force to respect, to fear, and to learn from. The message had been delivered. The lesson had been taught, and for the first time in history, the galaxy understood that humanity's strength lay not just in weapons but in wisdom, courage, and the restraint to choose mercy over destruction. The legend of the Vigilant would grow. Across the stars, whispers of the human ship's first encounter with the Valkyrie Armada spread. Traders would tell stories of the ship that had faced thousands of alien warships and emerged victorious without a single unnecessary death. Scholars would debate the tactics. Soldiers would fear the unseen threat. And the Valkyrie Empire, once unchallenged, would never forget the lesson humanity had taught them. Captain Ward stood alone on the command deck, looking at Earth below. She knew the galaxy had seen humanity's power, and they would think twice before challenging it. But she also knew that vigilance must never stop. Humanity had shown its strength, but the universe was vast and the unknown waited patiently. The Vigilant hummed softly in orbit, silent, patient, and ready. Humanity had made its first mark on the stars, and the story was only beginning. The Valkyrie Armada had returned to its empire, but the damage was more than physical. The pride of the once invincible fleet had been shattered. Ships were repaired, systems restored, and weapons recharged, yet no amount of maintenance could restore the confidence they had lost. For the first time in their history, the Valkyrie feared another species, and that species was humanity. Admiral Kethral sat quietly on the bridge of his flagship Fornaxis, staring at the holographic replay of the encounter with the human ship. Every moment, every movement, every shot from the UNS Dreadnought Vigilant played over in his mind. He had spent his career studying warfare, mastering strategies, and predicting enemy behavior. Yet humans had done the impossible. They had predicted him, outmaneuvered him, and exercised restraint all at the same time. This species, they are not like any other, Kethral whispered. His science officer nodded silently. They are intelligent, disciplined, and they understand the consequences of their actions, the officer replied. Their mercy is terrifying. Kethral leaned back in his chair, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He knew the High Council would demand revenge. They would demand an assault on Earth, to show the galaxy that the Valkyrie were still strong. But he also knew the truth. Any such attack would fail. Humanity was not just powerful. They were clever, disciplined, and patient. They would not strike recklessly, but when they did, the galaxy would see their strength. Far above Earth, the Vigilant continued its patrol. Captain Elena Ward watched the blue planet below, its oceans and continents shining like jewels. The encounter with the Valkyrie was over, but she knew the galaxy was now watching humanity closely. Commander Hale, she said, the message has been delivered. The Valkyrie fleet has withdrawn. They understand our strength and our restraint. Hale nodded. Yes, Captain. But do you think they will come back? Ward's eyes met the stars. Perhaps. But if they do, they will remember what happened. Humanity's presence is now known across the galaxy, and we must remain vigilant. One ship showed them our power, but the entire human race is stronger together. Meanwhile, news of the encounter spread through the Valkyrie Empire like wildfire. Ships in distant sectors paused in fear. Scientists studied the sensor logs. Generals reconsidered strategy and soldiers whispered about the human ship that had bested an entire armada. Kethrel stood before the High Council once again. This time the atmosphere was different. Fear had replaced anger, and caution had replaced pride. Admiral Kethrel, Archon Virel began, his voice quieter than before. The encounter with the human ship has left a mark on the Empire. What do you recommend? Kethrel straightened. We must avoid confrontation with humanity for now. We must study them, understand their tactics, and respect their power. Any attack without careful preparation will result in disaster. They are unlike any species we have faced. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Some members nodded in agreement, while others clenched fists in silent frustration. Yet all knew the truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Outside the council chambers, whispers of the human ship spread across the galaxy. Traders, explorers, and diplomats shared tales of the Vigilant, the single human ship that had faced an armada and survived. Some doubted the story. Others paused, reconsidering their assumptions about the humans. Even the Velkari fleet stationed far from Earth changed course to avoid human space. Fear had taken root in the Empire, and that fear was a powerful force. Back on Earth, Captain Ward reflected on the encounter. Humanity had proven itself, but she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown species, and not all would be as cautious as the Velkari. Humanity's strength, intelligence, and restraint would be tested again. Hale approached her quietly. Captain, the galaxy will now watch us. They will remember the Vigilant's actions. Ward nodded. Yes, and they will respect us or fear us. But our actions have shown one thing. Humanity does not seek destruction. We fight only to protect, and we act with intelligence, courage, and restraint. That is our greatest weapon. Weeks passed. Earth's scientists continued to analyze the Velkari encounter, learning from the human ship's technology and tactics. Military strategists revised defensive protocols. Humanity had grown stronger not just in power, but in understanding its place in the galaxy. The story of the Vigilant became legend. Across distant star systems, traders told tales of the human warship that had faced a mighty armada alone. Scholars debated its tactics. Soldiers feared its potential. And for the Velkari, the name of the human ship became a warning. Do not approach the blue planet. Kethrel, once proud and fearless, now walked quietly through the halls of the Vornaxis, deep in thought. He knew that humanity was not only powerful, but also unpredictable in ways that made the Velkari cautious. Intelligence combined with moral choice, he realized, was the true measure of strength. In orbit above Earth, the Vigilant remained on watch. Captain Ward looked at the stars, knowing that humanity had earned a place in the galaxy. One ship had changed the perception of an entire empire. One act of measured defense had turned fear into legend. Hale approached her again. Captain, do you think the Velkari will return? Ward shook her head slightly. Perhaps, but they will not come without hesitation. They have learned something that cannot be unlearned. Humanity is not just another species. We are disciplined, courageous, and merciful, and we act with purpose. For the first time, the galaxy understood what humanity could be. Not just survivors, but a force to respect, to fear in thought, and to consider carefully before action. And on Earth, humanity continued to grow, to learn, and to prepare. The story of the Vigilant was told quietly to new officers, inspiring courage, intelligence, and restraint. Every human ship that left Earth carried the lesson of the first encounter. Strength is more than weapons. Wisdom, discipline, and moral choice are the true measures of power. The Velkari Empire, once unchallenged, would remember the day they met the Vigilant. They would rebuild, adapt, and reconsider every decision. Yet the memory of humanity's restraint and precision would never fade. Captain Ward knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had just begun its journey among the stars. One ship, one encounter had changed the balance of power, and the lesson was clear. Humanity does not seek unnecessary war, but when it defends its home, it cannot be defeated. The Vigilant hovered silently above Earth, a sentinel in the dark. Its sensors scanned the void, ready for any threat. Its crew remained alert, disciplined, and prepared. For the Velkari, for other species, and for humanity itself, the galaxy had learned a simple truth. Underestimate humans at your own peril. Strength without wisdom is dangerous, but wisdom combined with courage, discipline, and mercy is unstoppable. The legend of the vigilant would echo for generations. Across star systems, humans would be respected. Across alien empires, caution would be exercised. And in the hearts of all who heard the story, one lesson would remain clear. Humanity fights with strength, acts with purpose, and spares when possible, but never underestimates its enemies. Captain Ward looked at Earth below and whispered to herself, "We have done what was necessary, and the galaxy will remember." The Vigilant continued its patrol, silent, watchful, and ready. A single ship had changed the perception of the universe, and the story of that first encounter with the Valkyrie Armada became the beginning of humanity's legend among the stars. The blue planet shone in the darkness of space, guarded by a single human warship. But the message was clear to all who watched. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never forget it.